Yeah.
That man was like,
You don't have to write. Just write B.
What'd you say?
To ensure segregation.
Yes, Mr.
I don't want
Thompson.
to claim these either. They all have bad grades.
No,
I will.
go back. Go back. To ensure,
I will
to
give you
ensure
like
segregation of African Americans
a handshake.
in Southern society.
You can take it to the bathroom. I'm on about another minute here. So we're not gonna cut to the restroom just yet. Okay?
Why?
Kill him.
I've got to go back.
You've got like half the class saying we need to go.
So what does that mean?
Yeah, but we take it earlier than we don't.
What time do we usually take?
12 p.m.
It's
12
12:10.
p.m. on my watch every day. Okay?
No, it's not. My bathroom break is in the other class.
Way earlier than this.
10:30. I mean, 10:30.
All right, Kelly's bringing up some papers. Ooh, you got a handful of papers.
I said yes.
All right.
And then they're gonna write us something we have to do. All right, that was a little less chaotic than I expected it might be. Good job.
It's not gonna be like a major write-up. It'll be like.
So hey, while we're on it, listen, I know how to run a class. I know that we take our bathroom break and in every day, okay? So it's on my watch, we're not missing it. I know it matters to some of y'all. We'll take our bathroom break at 12:10 every day. Agree? Deal?
I didn't know that was our time. I thought it was
Just
just
today
about when we
early.
feel like it.
It's still.
I didn't know that designated time.
Yes,
Next
we do.
however long.
All right, so hey, a little bit of a kind of a serious moment here, and lean into me if you will. Today's a bit of an anniversary for me personally, and I have spoken with most of my world historians about this before. Today, March 11th, in the year 2013, is the day that my friend Schad was killed in Afghanistan. And I always take a moment on March 11th to remember that day, just kind of remember how I felt on that day, where I was, what happened. Now, many of you have asked me about that picture in the past, and I've explained a little bit. But, March 11th is the day that I really explain the whole story. And the reason I do that, it has been said, I think from a Greek philosopher, it's been said a man dies twice in life. Once when he breathes for the last, right? You breathe, you die, funeral, you go into the ground. So man dies once when he breathes his last, and again when his name is spoken for the last time. And obviously there's a lot of famous people in the world, and their name will be spoken for history. Their memory is remembered for history. But, for the less famous people in the world, their memory kind of fades away when people who knew them also pass on. So in as much as it is up to me, I've always committed to share Rex's story, share Rex's name, say Rex's name. And that's what I'm going to do in the classroom right here today as well. So this is a picture of Rex in life, a little bit of background about Rex. And if you've heard this before, just, know it's an anniversary day, and I'm just sharing a little bit more. Cool thing about Rex is we met each other in our 20s. Okay, I think I was 24 when I met Rex, so that is quite a long time ago. I've lived a lot of life since then. Cool thing about Rex is that one of the first things we found out about each other is that we're both from Oklahoma. He was graduated high school class of 2005, and I was high school class of 2006, and we went to rival high schools. Now, we established, we don't think we ever met each other. We don't think we didn't play the same sports or cross paths. Maybe one time we were at the same speech and debate tournament, right? Super nerdy, right? So maybe one time we were in the same room, but we did not know each other. But at Fort Stewart, it would have been late 2011 when I got to Fort Stewart, and I became his platoon leader. And I got to know him. And one of the first things we figured out about each other is that we're both from Oklahoma. And that was kind of an instant connection. Now, I was a platoon leader. I was in charge of 35 people. A lot of responsibility for a young person. And now I've been trained for it. Whole point of the academy was to put you through some leadership growth and training, and I've been trained for it. But the thing about leadership is you got to recognize who has more experience than you, who has more know-how than you. Even if you're the leader, the people on your team, the people you are leading, they may have a lot more knowledge than you about how to do the job, how to run the platoon. In the Army, there's officers and then there's sergeants. So Rex was one of my sergeants. He was a squad leader. I was the leader of the platoon, all 35. He was the leader of a squad, and the squad is 9 or 10. So Rex was a squad leader. He was a great squad leader, right? We were at Fort Stewart, Georgia, and I've shared with you before, that's the home of the 3rd Infantry Division. Georgia's homegrown Army division. You guys should be proud of 3rd ID. I try to share that history with you as we go. Long history, all the way back to World War I. But of course, Rex and I collided in 2011 and we went to Afghanistan. We went to 3rd Infantry Division's first deployment to Afghanistan. And just a little bit about what I did in Afghanistan. I know I've shared with you kind of the culturalisms of Afghanistan before, but our battalion got split up. And that's not usually what would happen in the Army. Usually we'd fight as a team. But our battalion got split up into 27 different small units. And what we did was we went and supported the Special Forces mission. Our 27 different squads all attached to a Special Forces team. And, you know, I can tell you the history of Special Forces. They have a unique mission. It's kind of cool that we are connecting at the village level, talking with village elders, attending city council meetings, and just trying to influence at the village level. So our 3rd ID squads, all 27 of them, attaching into a SF team is kind of like more firepower for the SF team, just more members of the SF team. We weren't Special Forces, but we were augmenting them. That means Rex went one place and I went another. So part of the story is that I wasn't there on the day he was killed. And, you know, that's kind of it, that weighs on me in its own way. I wasn't there. I wasn't able to help. It wasn't something I experienced personally. So I don't have the story of getting shot at. I don't have the story of I saw people die. My story is that I wasn't there. And sometimes that's its own burden, wondering if you could have made a difference if you were there. Well, as it happens on March 11, 2013, I would say we all wake up, not just like we all wake up, we don't know what will happen today. We don't know what happened any day. We all woke up on March 11th, not knowing what the day would hold. What happened at Rex's location? He was in a small city called Jalrez, Jalrez, and they were going to go out on patrol on that day. And when I say patrol, I mean just like police officers in Alma go out on patrol just to make sure that the town is safe. They weren't trying to hunt down a specific bad guy. They weren't kicking in doors. They weren't raiding buildings. They were just going out on patrol, just trying to show their presence and bring security to the small city of Jalrez. Well, as is pretty normal in an Army operation, they had a pre-patrol huddle. And that means that the leaders, the officers and the sergeants got together and like, all right, guys, our vehicles, we're topped up on gas. Hey, this is the route we're going to take. Everybody's weapons good. Everybody's radio's good. Just a real simple check before you step out on patrol. And what happened at that moment, as they were meeting as leaders, there's a young Afghan man, and he had basically joined the Afghan local police as a traitor. He joined legitimately. Okay? He was in the local police. He had a uniform. He actually had an American weapon. Because part of the story is that we were augmenting the Afghans with equipment, with training. But his whole purpose is that he was an infiltrator. And he knew that when the time was right, his plan was to kill as many Americans as possible. So on this day, it's called an insider attack. On this day, March 11, 2013, he was in a vehicle. He had an American machine gun. And he took that machine gun and he turned it towards the leader's huddle. And he opened fire on that whole leader's huddle. And killed in that moment instantly was Rex. Rex was killed pretty much instantly. Also, the captain of the team, his name is Andrew Peterson Keel. I'll show you some pictures here. This is Rex. This is Andrew Peterson Keel. They also killed a military working dog. That dog's name is Bach, B-A-K. And many other people were wounded. About 20 plus people were wounded. Some with body wounds, like people shot through the shoulder. Some with just minor scrapes and bumps. Some with head wounds, right? Mental wounds, right? The long trauma of having been a part of that attack. Now, part of my story on that day is that I was at a different location. And we started to hear a bunch of radio chatter. We could tell that there's a firefight, right? When people's voices are a little bit more intense, they're speaking fast, we could tell that there's a firefight. And the way you talk on the radio, you never say someone's name. Okay, we all have what's called a roster number. And it starts with the first letter of your last name. So for him, it was an S. And then there's a series of numbers. And that way, if anyone intercepts the transmission, you don't know the names that you're talking about. Well, starting to listen, and I hear Rex's number come over the radio. And I immediately knew that my friend had been in the firefight, and I knew, we didn't know the outcome just yet. But what I learned by the end of the day is that he'd been killed in that particular firefight. So today is an anniversary day for that, right? I'll always think about March 11th in that way. This is, here's a leadership story for you. It's a real fine line as a leader to hang out and be friendly with your subordinates. Rex and I probably crossed that line a little bit. We were friendly. We actually ran a marathon together right before we went to Afghanistan. That's that day. We ran the Savannah Marathon together. And but push come to shove, I was the leader. I was the lieutenant. He was the sergeant. He would follow my directions. it's good to have camaraderie. It's good to be friendly, and that's what Rex and I were. We were friendly, but we also knew the working relationship that we had. This is the day that we went to Afghanistan. Okay, this is before we got on the plane. Obviously, we got a long journey ahead of us. So, just a couple pictures. These are the casualties of that day. After the attack, what happened is that I volunteered to bring Rex home. I volunteered to bring his body home. And it's a very honored process where we return service members to America to the final place of rest with a lot of dignity and honor. It's called a fallen angel escort. Because think about them, they fell in battle. We call them fallen angels, and I was his escort. It was his journey, right? But I was privileged to be a part of it as his escort. So there's the two flag-draped coffins. Andrew Peterson Keel is in there as well, and he had his own escort. I got to know that gentleman, and we kind of had a small part of our journey together. And think about it, I was taking Rex back to Oklahoma. I was going home, my home, as well as his home in Oklahoma, and I got to know his family. I got to really interact with them. I didn't know them before, but part of something that I wasn't expecting was how much I got to interact with the family and really help them as well. We were all jumbled up, we were all confused and hurt, and we just lost a friend or a family member, and kind of grieving together was a super helpful part of the process. And actually, they even asked me to speak at his funeral, which is not something I was expecting. And what I give you on that is that sometimes in life, you got to be ready for the things that you're not ready for. You got to rise to the occasion. I wasn't ready to speak at his funeral. I didn't know if I had any good words, much less the right words. But I was asked to speak at his funeral, and that was my high privilege. This is how I prefer to think of Rex. They, like I said, in the military, there's a variety of missions you might do. Sometimes it involves shooting. But these guys, they were handing out candy. They were loving on kids. They were providing security. So they weren't going out to arrest anybody or shoot anybody or knock anyone's house down. When they got killed, they were just providing security in the area. This is kind of how I prefer to think of Rex, as making a difference in the community, making a difference by just taking care of the children, caring for the children in the village of Jalrez. And then finally, it's a picture of me speaking at his funeral, the kind of the privilege of my lifetime, and I'm honored to have been asked to do so. And what I want to read to you now, this is something I posted on Facebook several years ago. It was actually on the 1-year anniversary. So I was still kind of deeply reflective. It was a big part of my whole year, the kind of thing that I thought of every day because it was a very fresh memory. And this is what I posted on March 11th, 2014. So I'm just going to read it to you. In about 3 hours from now, Afghanistan time, 1 year ago, March 11th, I heard of contact at VSP Jalrez in the Wardak province, and I was gut punched when I heard the battle roster number starting with S come over the radio. Initial reports were that 369 soldiers were wounded, and our command immediately began coordinations to visit these soldiers in the hospital. We didn't know hurt versus killed, so we were going to go try to visit them in the hospital. I scratched out some quick notes to all of them, the names that I knew, the guys that had been in my platoon, for the chaplain to deliver for me. To Rex Schad, I wrote that he better get well quick, because we had some baseball to watch and some soda pop to drink later that summer. The letter was never delivered, and we all know why. It's been a long year, and I've frequently been sad and hurt, full of memories and thoughts of the things that we used to do at different times on the calendar, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or things that we should still be doing now. I'm not his blood, but we are family, and his absence has hurt like that of a lost friend, comrade, and brother. I will forever have been honored to have been his escort home. He was the fallen angel. It was his journey, not mine. But I am forever changed by having accompanied him the whole way. To anyone who would say that Rex died in vain, I want to remind you or educate you of this: the solemn promise that the American people made to themselves following the Civil War. This is true. A promise to never again engage an enemy on American soil. Rex and everyone in uniform, no matter what their job is a part of upholding that promise in 2013, 2014, and beyond, all the years beyond. Rex was literally taking the fight to the enemy on the other side of the world so that the trash on the side of the highway is exactly just that. It's trash. It's not a roadside bomb. So that a building or a high ground or a hill isn't a place for a sniper to be positioned here in America. Why are we in Afghanistan, or should we still be there? A lot of people ask that question. The reason is so that the Taliban isn't here in America, or so that our enemies aren't here in America. Rex died preserving that solemn promise that is still real and still kept today. So it is kind of perfect. We're right on the heels of our Civil War unit. Something I didn't talk about inside of that is that the American people, following the Civil War, in the period of Reconstruction, we made a promise to ourselves. Now, it's not legislation, it's not written down, but we made a promise to ourselves that after we had just torn our land up, we had shot at each other, we had killed each other, we burned our own home. We promised that we would never again engage in war on American soil. And that's the big reason why September 11th was such a gut punch, because we were attacked on our home soil. But that's also the reason why the military, soldiers, sailors, airmen, go overseas to fight elsewhere, so that we aren't fighting at home, so that our buildings aren't under attack, so that our highways aren't invaded, and are we safe or are we not safe? We have committed to not have war at home. So big political idea, why do we go overseas? Why do we send our soldiers so many different places around the world? It's so that we don't fight here at home. And everybody who's ever worn the uniform and gone overseas, no matter what the job was, is upholding that solemn promise. So that's what I think about on this day. That's what I think about when I'm still in uniform. Why am I still part of the Georgia National Guard? To be a part of that, and to be a part of upholding that solemn promise. Should you ever get the chance to go to Fort Stewart, there's a very beautiful park called Warriors Walk. And every soldier who died in Iraq or Afghanistan has a tree there. This is Rex's tree. And it's kind of harrowing to think about how many trees there are, to see how many trees there are. Now, Third ID has a long history all the way back to World War I. These trees are only for Iraq and Afghanistan. And when you see the nearly 400 trees, when they grow, when they blossom, when they provide a lot of shade, you got to think about that shade is being provided by soldiers who fell in battle. And it really makes you think about how many there have been. So this is one of the last times I was at Fort Stewart. I don't know if we'll swing by there tonight or this weekend, but I always think about Rex's tree. I think I've showed this to you before, and actually I'm going to briefly, whether you've seen this video before or not, I'm going to show you, I made this as an at-home class learning day in the past, and I just want to show you what Warriors Walk looks like, and I'll encourage you, should you ever get the chance to visit Fort Stewart, might be a really good thing to go visit. Fun day. Come out.
I know I told you about my friend Rex before, and I described how Fort Stewart has this special place of remembrance for all fallen 3rd Infantry Division soldiers, and it's called Warriors Walk. And it's one tree planted for every 3rd Infantry Division soldier who was killed in the recent global war on terrorism. That's the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I am right now standing at Rex's tree, and see, it's pretty special place. It's pretty quiet. Show you all around me. How deep it stretches. Every tree represents a soldier killed in Iraq or Afghanistan. And there's actually one other section to the far side where I'm standing right now. But I'm standing at Rex's tree. Been here many times over the years, but not recently. And I'm happy to be here, take a name, think about my friend, and show it to you all as well. You can see it's got a nice setup. This is his name. The base of the tree, people have left things across the years. And I personally left these marathon medallions. That's what I did for a couple of years. Think about Rex every time I ran a marathon, and I bring the medal to his tree here. So overall, it's an overcast morning as it is, but man, I've never seen the trees this full before, and it's a little too shady. There's too many of them. So if you're watching this, just take a second, think about Rex. Miss you guys, love you guys. See you soon. This is a memorial of names for soldiers from the 1st Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division. See the big one? This is the brigade that I was in. And I will zoom in on my battalion, 3rd Battalion, 69th Armored Regiment, Speed and Power, in Latin, Vitesse et Puissance. And these are the 3 individuals I served with in Afghanistan.
It's a very different video right there. So anyway, March 11th is a anniversary day for me personally, and I will always share about Rex because as long as I have breath, I want to keep saying his name and sharing his story. Many of you have asked about the color pencil drawing before, and I've shared with you a little bit, but this is a little bit more. And Landon saw this between periods, so I will explain this here. These are my personal dog tags, but I also carry one of Rex's dog tags. When I was his casualty escort home, this was actually attached to his casket, obviously to make sure that we knew who was inside. And this was pulled off at the funeral home right at the end of the process, and I put it on my dog tag, so I always think about Rex carrying this dog tag right here as well. So I know a lot of you have veterans in your family, and I've given you a speech on Veterans Day before about, what is a veteran and sometimes the baggage veterans carry. I would encourage you to, be maybe ask them for stories, let them talk about their friends because sometimes that is healing. And I appreciate you letting me talk about mine. So, hard pivot. I want to explain to you briefly maybe the new items you see up here. Landon's also already discovered these because I guess they don't do anything in Mr. Burkett's room, so they come here and bug me for a little bit. So I have a friend. He's a West Point grad. He's a West Point guy. And, we weren't best friends at school, but as I've described that West Point connection, a lot of times people just stay in touch, and you've always got a network, you got some camaraderie. So I got this my friend here. He saw a couple things we were doing in class. He said, "Hey, I've got this hobby. My hobby is 3D printing. Could I 3D print anything for your class that might help you teach in class?" I was like, "Man, I don't even know where to start. Whatever you come up with sounds pretty cool to me." So I don't know anything about 3D printing. I guess there's patterns online. You can basically download a file, and then that file becomes the printing. And he sent me a couple options, and I was like, "Chris, whatever you print will be awesome." And he printed these 3 things that I'm going to share with you now, and then they're going to stay in our room. This is a bust of George Washington. But if you look at this bust, what might it appear? What style? What does it appear that he's dressed as?
Ancient Greek.
Roman and or Greek. Yeah, so this goes to show you how George Washington was perceived in his early presidency. This is not a negative thing. It's actually making a connection to that classical period. It's not saying he was an emperor. It's not saying that he was a bad military leader or a tyrant or anything like that. It's actually giving him the respect of being a revered commander. And, much of the United States government and even our early architecture, think about the Capitol and the Supreme Court, with the pillars and the marble, was modeled after classical time period Greek and Roman art and democracy and leadership values. So this is George Washington as a Greek-Roman influence. This is Thomas Jefferson, this normal, okay, Thomas Jefferson normal. And then this third one, I'm blown away by. I'm genuinely shooketh, blown away by what Chris was able to print here. Can somebody tell me what I'm holding in my hands?
Abraham Lincoln ball.
It is the face of Abraham Lincoln. And this is actually a life mask, not a death mask, but a life mask. It is something that was very popular back in the time period, especially before photography. Now, there is photography of Abraham Lincoln, but especially before photography, famous people, and especially leaders, rulers, would have their face plastered and then a mold made of their face. Sometimes in death, okay, especially if they died maybe unexpectedly or in battle or whatever. Sometimes in death, but also sometimes in life, because they wanted to capture their facial features from their living time period. So think about all that would go into this. You'd have to sit still for a long time. Someone is putting plaster on your face, and I'm sure there's air holes for your nose and mouth. And then they create this final face-like, mold of what your face looked like. And the reason it's bald is because they wouldn't have plastered up to his hairline. They probably just had a model that they finished out rounded without any hair. So I'm just amazed that Chris was able to print Abraham Lincoln's life mask. Almost, I think that's probably a little smaller than his face, but it's like almost life size. And this is just going to be in our room. It's going to be in our room for the future. So I want to say thanks to Chris for printing this stuff for our classroom, and just put our hands on it. You know what? Maybe he needs a little Roman influence as well. Right there. So thanks to Chris for being a part of our class and sending us a couple of cool things like that. Y'all ready to go to the bathroom?
Yes.
I feel like you're ready to go to the bathroom. Go ahead and go to the bathroom. We'll come back and do what we're doing next.